Hello, Shadow Wolf here, and we are back with another video. Welcome to Season 2 of our Noragami review, and with a higher quality microphone this time around. Now, just like Season 1, we're going to summarize the good, the bad, and what should have changed to put this show on a higher scale of the map, along with the other Mount Rushmore of anime. If you haven't checked out Season 1 review, don't worry, I'll link it in the description, but with that said, let's just dive straight in.
邪魔なもの、なんだって上手に切ってあげるよ。やっと本当のあなたを思い出して。あなたは魔がつかみなの。この仕事の方が人に求められてる。ありがとうございます。ヤトさん。みんなに喜んでもらう。偉いわ。さすがヤトね。
The beginning shifts our focus away from the three main characters, as it starts out with Bishamon having a nightmare of Yato slaying her regalia before she wakes up and comes to her senses as she recollects herself. We notice that she is a bit sick as of lately, constantly over-medicating, before she goes out patrolling phantoms. She stumbles upon a spirit that needs help, and soon adds her to the family. Kazuha warns her that taking on too many regalia could be straining on her health because, as I brought up in Season 1, regalia are connected by body and soul, so the gods can feel when regalia gives in to bad temptation to do bad things that could sting their master. Yukine soon meets a friend, and we soon learn that he is one of Bishamon's regalia, and that he has basically been tending to this tree for 30 years by himself, waiting for a friend to come back and visit, because every summer she always comes down to visit him and make small talk with him. And we learned that they had a promise to share the cherry blossoms together, but it's been so long that she may have forgotten about him. And we also learned that Bishamon, since she has so many regalia, that it could be a double-edged sword because he hasn't heard his name be called to join the fight in a while, or in ages. So it can get pretty lonely being in his shoes. But that's when we finally get introduced to him.
Taken root beautifully.
Hi, Doctor.
It's going to bloom just fine this year, thanks to all your hard work.
Well, thank you, but I just did what you told me to do.
So, all sad and alone again this year?
What?
How long are you going to keep this up? For decades? For centuries? I mean, surely it's obvious by now. She forgot you a long time ago. And she isn't the only one, is she? How long has it been since Lady Bishamon called your name? Years now, right? Even your master has forgotten you. That must be pretty depressing. You're totally alone in the world. There's nothing for you here. Why stay?
And with this, we get introduced to Season 2's main antagonist, the Doctor, Kuguha. And I knew from this scene alone, followed by my bad gut-wrenching feeling, that he was going to be a big deal this season. Bishamon suddenly wakes up in shock, feeling this huge pain in her chest, since her regalia's name suddenly vanished. We start to really see the cracks in Bishamon's family, as she asks the children if they've seen Suzuha lately. They all put up a fake smile and say there's nothing to worry about, my lady, and that everything is fine. Just to keep up a perfect image so Bishamon's health doesn't get affected by them being sad or distressed. Now, one of the noticeable things here is that Yukine and Yato's bond as regalia and master is very different in comparison to Bishamon. They are more open and direct with each other's feelings and say exactly how they feel, while Bishamon's regalia are more reserved and keep up fake images and say don't be sad or don't be angry because it might sting the master being in distress and affect her health. Kazuma starts to notice Bishamon has been taking an extreme amount of medicine lately, and then he spots a blight on Bishamon's neck. So he decides to gather everyone around and tell them there will be an ablution ceremony tonight. He has the doctor manually examine everyone for blight, and they all end up being clear, even the doctor himself. Bishamon suddenly walks in and wonders, why is everyone gathered here? Kazuma notices that the blight he saw earlier is gone. Everyone is glad that Bishamon was okay, but felt very disappointed in Kazuma that he distrusted them so quickly. But little did he know it was all part of the doctor's plan, because he can easily hide blights, since he's a doctor after all. Yato soon observes the tree, because he notices something felt off. Whenever a storm occurs, it's a sign that a phantom has attacked. And soon he encounters Kaguha.
You really reek of dog. Did you kill him?
It isn't good to be so suspicious and mistrustful all the time. Such traits can prove fatal, especially for denizens of the far shore, like us. Wouldn't you agree?
Who are you?
Oh, nobody special. Just someone who wanted to meet the great Yato in person.
Not gonna give me a name?
What for? I'm just an ordinary regalia. Do you really need my name?
I'll ask a different question. Why don't you tell me whose pet you are?
There's some real fire in you, isn't there? That said, Lord Yato, it doesn't matter how many petty wishes you grant. You're a nobody. No one will ever remember you. I bet you must live in constant fear. Without a regalia, what are you? Just a pathetic excuse for a god!
Did your master teach you to greet an unarmed person with a borderline? That's really horrible manners, you know.
Yeah. You don't have a single shrine, but you're that powerful? You must have a particularly strong tie to the near shore. Bonds with the near shore can be fleeting, also remarkably fragile, as I'm sure you're aware. Ephemeral. I think perhaps that's the best way to describe it, don't you? I hope we'll meet again sometime, Lord Yato. And please, until we do, try not to fade away, all right?
That's no problem! I'm not gonna disappear! Not as long as there's someone out there who still remembers.
He just keeps on staring and pulling the strings of the people around him, and continues to play the good guy and the bad guy. He asks Kazuma, has he heard the news lately about Suzuha, about how he died and maybe the phantoms has preyed on him. And he is wondering why Bishamon is suffering so much lately. Kazuha decides to leave and try to check for more info on what happened, and he has told the doc to stay with Bishamon. Yato tries to tell Yukine to stay away from the cherry tree to keep him from figuring out what happened to his friend Suzuha. The doc soon pays a visit to to bishamon and says, I don't know why Kazuma left in such a rush. I heard a strange rumor that maybe he helped Yato with an ablution. I think I saw them talking. Before bishamon suddenly spills her tea in shock. Yukine soon makes his way down to the cherry tree that Yato warned him to stay away from. He spots flowers being placed there as if it was a gravesite. Yato suddenly feels this pain in his chest as he gets a visit from his old regalia of the past.
Yukine. Nora.
Humans carry so many emotions with them, even in death. Joy, anger, heartache, pleasure. Look! See how easily it unravels? Once a bond has come unraveled, there's no mending it. Careful not to become entangled or it will choke you as a scourge. You know, Yato, if something holds you back, you're better off just cutting it down.
Anytime anything bad happens, we always notice that Nora is lurking in the dark shadows, just praying for Yato's downfall. She's a great written character, leading the sheep to the slaughter, as they call it. Like when Yukine was being a rebel back in season 1. She would say a few things to kind of push that edge to him and make him snap to break all those windows. Or when Yato was heavily blighted and she was trying to get him to use her again like the old days. But anyway, as Kazuma makes his way back to bishamon, Yukine rushes in and grabs him as they teleport. But the bad thing is, they got spotted together. And bishamon starts to lose it when she asks him what's going on and why are you with Yato's regalia. Yukine tries to plead and ask what happened to his friend Suzuha, but she couldn't give him an answer because she wasn't sure herself. She asked if the rumors were true about Yato. Did Kazuma try to save his life with an ablution? And that's when Kazuma tries to plead that she's wrong. He is your savior. He didn't do anything wrong. She pulls the trigger as he draws the borderline. And she is about to release him. She walks away in hesitation. She couldn't bring herself to do it under all that pressure and everything that has happened so fast. And so she just decided to tell him consider himself exiled and she doesn't want to see him again. All the regalia are in complete shock about everything that's happened and wonder what are they going to do without their lead navigator coordinating their attacks. They have so many questions like why the betrayal and what did Kazuma mean when he said he was her savior? The doctor walks in and interrupts and plays the good guy and says, don't think too much about what Kazuma said. And don't stress too much or it'll affect Bishamon's health. She already has a ton of heartache already. Let's just focus on our master and forget about Kazuma. He's a traitor now. Kazuma makes his way to where Yato is and starts to think about what are his next steps since he got exiled. Soon Hiyori and Yato find themselves ambushed at the park from one of Bishamon's regalia. She leads Yato on a chase to lure him away from Hiyori, as she soon gets captured by the doctor. Kazuma shows up to save the day and tries to restrain them both, but the doctor had other plans. Since he was actually a Nora all along, the incantation didn't work to restrain his name. Noras are basically held by other masters, well, named by other masters. He soon decides to put Kazuma under a perilous spell to put him to sleep. Yato makes his return to the park and notices Hiyori is gone entirely. Hiyori and Kazuma eventually wakes up and find themselves sealed inside a chamber. While they're inside the chamber, they're trying to piece things together and wonder why the doctor would capture them both. And we learn that he is trying to repeat the events of before by having Bishamon become corrupt. But this time, Yato killed Bishamon as a new master is born. You see, whenever a god becomes reborn, they forget their memories entirely of their previous life. So it's basically like starting over from scratch. And the doctor basically wants to replace Kazuma as his exemplar. So he's setting this whole thing up to make it look like Bishamon had captured Hiyori, so that they will end up trying to kill each other. Yato soon gets ready to make his way up to Bishamon's palace to get Hiyori back. He asks one of the gods can he teleport them there since he doesn't have a shrine to get there on his own. He agrees to help out Yato, but only under two conditions. As the battle soon begins between Yato and Bishamon, Hiyori starts to wonder why the names end in Ha for Bishamon's family, while Kazuma's name ends in Ma. That's when he reveals in the past he was the last of his clan, since Yato slayed the rest of them. He asked Yato because Bishamon had gotten severely corrupted and no one would confess who did it. Eventually they all started turning on each other and pointing fingers and ended up trying to kill each other. Kazuma heard the rumors of this legendary Nora-wielding god of calamity, so he went out in search of him, and that was when he found Yato. And he soon begged him that their master has been corrupted, and he needs him to save their lives. So that was when Yato began wielding a Nora and started to slay them all one by one. Bishamon had become sad and ill for a while after that had happened, but then she let her hatred for Yato start to fuel her to keep her alive. As the fight continues on between Yato and Bishamon in real time, Yato gets the upper hand. So they all interfere and start to try to draw a borderline to block out his weapon. That's when soon Bishamon comes in and shatters Yukine into two pieces, as Yukine tries to block the attack. Yato is in distraught, thinking that Yukino is dead, but that's when he notices that the name hasn't vanished yet. And that's when he soon transforms into two swords. Now you're probably wondering why this is, and that is because whenever a regalia protects their master, that's when they transform and become an exemplar, which is basically a step 2 status. The doctor decides to put more pressure on the fight and have the blight load up on Bishamon to give Yato the upper hand, and she soon becomes heavily corrupted. However, she still keeps on fighting, even though the regalia are trying to convince her that this fight is getting way out of control. One of the regalia who had a fight with Yato earlier steps in and admits that she is the traitor, as she leads the line to where Kazuma is to get him and Hiyori out of the seal. They are finally broken free from the seal and decide to make their way to where Bishamon is to try to step in and stop the fight. The doctor unleashes his dinosaur phantom to eat up Bishamon's regalia. Bishamon starts to notice that a lot of regalia's names are disappearing and at a super fast rate. She is still blinded and thinks that Yato's the one taking them away from her again. That's when we start to slowly see one of my favorite parts. Yato shift into a sudden state to where he gets unhinged.
Yato!
Once a bond has come unraveled, there's no mending it. Careful not to become entangled or it will choke you as a scourge.
Yato, look out!
You're better off just cutting it down.
Hiyori and Kazuma shows up just in time and tells them that it was all part of the doctor's plan. Bishamon still doesn't listen and continues to go psychotic, blaming Yato to give back her children. That's when Yato decides to get serious and decides that his only way is to just kill her, as he slices her neck. Kazuma steps in and takes the hit for Yato, as he finally tells Bishamon his secret he's been hiding all along. That he let Yato kill the regalia in order to save her life from the corruption. That's when she finally decides to stop her rampage and just drops her weapons and starts to cry in pain at the loss of her regalia that she's held in for so many centuries. And that's when the mastermind himself finally reveals himself, calling her a failure of a god, granting names to reckless, broken, obsessed souls, and that she should be reborn anew, before Yato interferes and cuts off his hand, interrupting. Now, I think everything up to this point has been S-tier storytelling for the first half, except he summons a phantom to do the fighting for him against Yato instead of an actual 1v1. Yato decides to make a quick work of the phantom. Before Yato decides to finish him off, Bishamon steps in to stop him. And instead she just decides to release him and send him away. Yato literally had the exact same reaction that I had. That after all of that, he decided to just get sent away. Considering how much Yato was hated, it just feels counterintuitive to send the doctor away after he intentionally killed everyone. Anyway, to wrap it up, Bishamon's story. She basically killed the giant phantom that was left inside by the doctor, since it was the only way to save them and she couldn't purify all those regalia, since they were all corrupt. Except this time she was the one doing it and not Yato. And after all that, we see that everyone is safe and sound, and soon Kazuma wakes up, and we see a slight shift in Bishamon's family and her character as a whole. No more putting up appearances and holding a fake smile to not affect her health. They decide to take a different route this time around and decide to open up to each other, similar to how Yukine and Yato's bond are. They start with the book, sharing all their thoughts in the book of just anything, basically. I think that's a step in the right direction. A slow prep to her character development. She at least went from a F-tier trash can character that I didn't care about to at least becoming a solid D after covering her backstory and just giving us her side of things this time around, instead of focusing on Yukine and Yato. But I think this is a good build-up because the author intends to actually do something big with her later on in the series. So all in all, I'll give her the D tier. And we'll see where she goes from here, if they make her redeemable or not. Honestly, if the season ended right here, it would have been a perfect send-off. We had a solid villain, good storytelling overall on why Yato slayed her regalia. And it was just perfect all around. Better than what we're about to get into, because now things are going to start to go to a downward slope for this next half. But let's just continue. Yato returns back home as everyone greets him happily with cheers that everything turned out fine. But soon the interruption gets cut short because he is reminded of the two conditions he made with the god Lord Tenji. One, that he was never involved in helping him get to the shrine to where Bishamon is. And two, that he is to sever the ties with Hiyori. Sever the ties is basically him using Yukine to cut the line to make it seem like they've never met and she basically forgets him. He thinks it's for the best since she has always been in danger since she's been with Yato, by being hostage many times up to this point. But soon Hiyori asks, is that really what he wants? She doesn't want to lose Yato. They're both important to her. We soon get a cut to Bishamon awaiting trial due to her actions, and is asked questions about Kaguha, the doctor, since they were curious about his mass actions, summoning phantoms. They give her a slap on the wrist of everything that happened between her and Yato because they're mostly worried about Kaguha anyway. We soon learn that Yato and Hiyori didn't cut ties and are still together. They have an encounter with a god called Ebisu, who is interested in buying Yato's regalia, since Yukine has become an exemplar. They soon turn down the offer though, and Yato has been having mixed feelings lately since all this time he has been wanting a shrine, and it's super important to him that he gets one. Hiyori soon hands him a shrine before Yato starts to tear up in happiness. I'm going to be honest, this scene really irritates me, because this could have really had a heavier impact. We know so little about Yato, let alone understand or have any meaning behind why he wants a shrine. It just feels kind of empty to the people watching. We soon later learn why he is so happy that he finally gets to live a long eternal life with the shrine. You see, since the beginning, he has had to live through many people's broken, scattered, and hazy memories. So he has to keep doing these random deeds to spread believers, or he will cease to exist entirely. Since gods are born from a wish, famous gods like Ebisu, Bishamon, and many others don't have to worry about that stuff, because they are already widely known and already have shrines. But Yato doesn't. So he is forced to keep doing these random tasks like saving cats and whatnot. But the thing is, why did they have to blatantly tell us this instead of showing us this? He had to endure this for centuries, about his past and why he had to rely on Nora to do dirty tasks like killing people and whatnot. Where did he come from? There are many questions about that as well. And we still learn nothing about Yukine and his abusive dad from season 1. And we're already in the halfway point of season 2. Anyway, we soon learn that Ebisu is wielding a mask and messing with phantoms, much like the Dr. Kukaha. Bishamon gets a visit from Yukine, as he asks Kazuma to train him to get much stronger. Kazuma agrees to it. Yato is back home celebrating about the shrine he is handed by Hiyori. and that his century dream has finally come true. We learned that he was once told by someone that he doesn't need a shrine. And he is so happy that if only his kid self could see him now. And we still receive no info. Yato meets with Nora in private and discusses how he plans on releasing her and cutting ties. But Nora has other ideas in mind, as she tells him, "Oh, so you're just gonna abandon me now?" Before ambushing him with a bunch of phantoms, she tells him to just be a good boy and do what father says as Yato is lying there on the ground. Before he suddenly disappears off the map for a while and no one has heard from Yato in weeks, wondering where he went. Soon we see Yato with Nora making a deal to kill someone, since he got off easy after killing her daughter. That's when Yato catches him in his sleep and slaughters him. He starts to hunt down victims one by one as they beg for their life from Yato and tell them, "Wait, I'll turn myself in." Yato eventually loses it, wondering how long is Nora going to make him do these tasks, as he soon beats up the phantoms around him and demands to be let go. We eventually get a greeting by this mysterious father character that walks in, and he says he'll let Yato go free if they complete a task in the underworld to save someone. Yato decides to take the task as they head down into the underworld. We also learn that the higher-ups who trialed Bishamon earlier has gotten some word that Ebisu has been messing with the phantoms in the lower realms, and they think that he's a traitor. So they decide to hold Bishamon and a couple of random no-name guys we haven't heard of this entire series hostage, because they're under suspicion that they may be working with Ebisu. Yato encounters Ebisu as he tells him that he had came down to rescue him. But Ebisu tells him that he's not leaving without the locution brush. They soon get dragged in farther down by the demon girl named Izanami. She altered her appearance to match anyone who sees her. So she could be your girlfriend or anyone you're close to in general, which is why we see her disguised as Hiyori in Yato's eyes. She tries to make a deal that they can take the locution brush if one of them decides to stay with her forever. Ebisu heavily declines and says no can do, as him and Yato start to fight it out between each other and decide who can stay. Yato asks why he is so obsessed with the brush, and Ebisu asks Yato why he keeps doing these random odd jobs. Soon Ebisu gets the upper hand and wins the fight, and gets rewarded the locution brush by Izanami. It turns out the fight was a ploy all along, just for him to get the brush. While all that's going on, we see that Hiyori is having a fuzzy memory remembering Yato and Yukine, since she has been out of contact with them for so long. We see her out on a date with a couple of friends. She soon gets a visit from Yukine out of nowhere, and her memory starts to come flooding back. She leaves her body and decides to search for Yato on her own by tracking his scent. Meanwhile, Ebisu and Yato are in a wild goose chase as they are trying to get away from Izanami as they try to find an exit and make their way out, since they have the brush now. We soon get some downtime since they have gotten away from Izanami, and we learn that Ebisu is the most reincarnated god out of all of them, meaning that he is known for dying the most times out of all the gods. And his previous selves have been trying to get that brush. And Ebisu decides to share with Yato why he wants the brush so bad. He wants to control the phantoms and restrain them entirely, to make the world a better place. Yato soon starts to reminisce a bit after hearing that. He's in a bit of shock.
This whole time I assumed he was doing it for power. Such a fierce will. I'll never have that.
You're a god of calamity. Don't you see? This is the sort of work you should be doing, sir. And you will appreciate this type of job a lot more. Well done. Very well done, Yato.
Yato has a slight change in his heart. His entire life he's been told what to do by his father. He never exactly had a will of his own. He gets inspired and decides he needs to change himself and make himself someone people can be proud of. We soon see the regalia gather and they look a bit distressed since their masters haven't returned in quite some time and have been held captive. So they have a regalia use her spiritual power to speak with the trees and learn what's going on. And they learn where Yato has disappeared to. And we also learn that the heavens have decided to deem Ebisu as a traitor and that he needs to be put to death, since they've discovered multiple masks. Bishamon and a couple of no-name gods try to make their escape. Kazuma comes in and helps them rescue them, and they decide to make their way to look for Ebisu and ask him questions. Yato decides to hold off on the monsters chasing them, while Ebisu makes his escape. He soon sees that Izunami has sealed off the entrance, and that they can't escape, so Ebisu decides to come back to Yato and tell him to take the brush and just go on without him. None of this matters. He's always been known as a god who reincarnates, so dying here won't really matter to him, since he's so used to dying all the time. Yato tells him to forget about the previous yous and who have died, and think about the current you, the one that is alive right now, and actually decide to live for once. And he also told him to use the brush to make an exit of his own. Ebisu eventually lands outside, and he discovers Bishamon, Yukine, and Hiyori shows up alongside him. They open up a vent and have Bishamon try to go in and save Yato. She soon finds him and has a 1v1 with Izunami and tells Yato that his friends are waiting for him outside. The others outside are trying to keep the event open for them to get back, but it keeps on shutting. Ebisu eventually wakes up and tells them that he knows of a way to get them out. A soul call, where they basically just say their name and they're instantly teleported back. But only a human can do it. Gods can't and regalia can't. It has to be someone connected to the far shore, like Hiyori. While Bishamon is still having a fight with Izanagi, trying to rescue Yato, she suddenly hears her voice mid-fight and gets teleported out. They keep trying for Yato's name, but it doesn't work at all, and they soon learn that it's not his actual name. They don't know enough about Yato at all. While that's going on, the heavens show up and get ready to extinguish Ebisu. And they aren't trying to hear anyone out or any excuses, they just want him dead. Ebisu decides that just this once he is going to fight for himself and not accept being reincarnated and dying again. And is going to actually live this time, like Yato's advice. Hiyori soon starts to think back about the shrine, the one that she made for Yato, and starts to piece things together. And finally she calls him his name as he returns from the underworld, Yabuku. Bishamon tries to hold off the heavens while Ebisu makes his escape in the forest. Soon the heavens decide to stop playing around and actually get serious, and just decide to go for their big attack, the fortification. Yato manages to cut the attack in half and save Ebisu from getting one-shotted. Thankfully, it actually managed to work this time because Yukine has leveled up and become an exemplar and has gotten a lot stronger. Sadly, they had one more trick up their sleeve, and they've decided to just seal Ebisu in place before blasting him. We see Ebisu in Yato's arms, as Yato was telling him not to die.
Don't you die! You hear? Don't you dare die on me, Ebisu!
It's all right. You are very famous, Lord Ebisu.
A god like you will always be reborn.
See? There's no reason to be scared.
Don't worry, it's okay to die.
Ebisu! Come on, stay strong, man! What about you as an individual? Is dying here really what you want? What this year wants?
Oh God, I consider myself lucky to have met you.
Ebisu, I'm the lucky one.
No, please. I don't want to die. I feel like this part really irritated me. For the second half of this season, we get all this build up. In fact, we learn more about Ebisu than we did about Yato and Yukine combined this entire season. And they really decided to just write him off screen. I was actually started to take an interest in Ebisu and see where they go with him. This god who constantly reincarnates again and again and constantly dies the most, and has been told it's okay to just die by his own regalia. And he finally gets a will of his own to not die. And then they just decide to kill him off. Anyway, to continue on, we get a cut to Yato taking this kid who is reincarnated Ebisu to his favorite place to eat. He tries to ask him if he remembered anything of the past, but nope, he doesn't remember anything. He is confused about why he died and asks, was he okay in the previous life? Everyone says he was executed, so maybe he wasn't good after all. And that's when Yato tells him that that's not true. He was an amazing god, and he is sorry that he couldn't save him. He couldn't fulfill his wish. They decide to finish off the series with this lackluster moment between Yato talking to Yukine, asking him for guidance, as he spilled just a tiny bit about his past. He didn't really cover everything between him and his dad and Nor. He just kind of told him like a tiny bit about it. And eventually they have an encounter with Nor, and he asks, was all that a setup by Father for Ebisu to take the brush and take the fall instead and get executed? And she laughs, saying that he is just now figuring that out. And Yato finally gets mad and decides that to release her for good, and that she never changes, not even since they were younger. And that's basically where they decide to end it off at. He only told Yukine only 5% of his past. We get nothing about the connection between Yato and Nora. We get nothing about the mysterious father character who showed up. We get nothing about Yukine's backstory. Nothing about Yato's backstory. Ebisu just died, and they could have at least redeemed Ebisu by making him remember his past a little bit, just give us something with him so all that character build-up didn't go to waste. I feel like they could have gotten a slap on the wrist if we would have at least gotten a season 3 right after season 2, but even with season 3, going this long without knowing much about any of these characters is so much risky potential. It's just risky in general, going this far and still not knowing very much about any of these characters. Or even Yato and the pink-haired girl Kofuku and her regalia. There's just so many lists of unanswered questions. I could go on and on and on. For the first half, the Bishamon arc was a solid 9. The one where she was blaming Yato and they had that big fight. That was a solid 9 right there. But then when we got to the rest of the show, it just kind of slowly took a dive, and I give it maybe a 7 at best after rewatching it and trying to piece things together that I know from the manga and whatnot. Maybe a 7 at best, but coming in blind and watching in the anime and still not knowing anything, I could picture people giving it a lower score. Even with everything I've learned so far in the manga, and after I finished the manga, I might have bumped it up by 1 point, giving it an 8. But overall, yeah, I'll try not to dive into the manga, the stuff that I know, since that's more for a separate video. That would be much longer than this, or maybe the same amount, but that wraps up our Noragami video of the bad, the good, what they should have changed. And I could say there's definitely a lot they should have changed, starting with revealing more info about these characters and their past, and like I said in the first season, giving Hiyori some powers instead of playing the damsel in distress role. And I really love the music for the series. I thought it kind of gave me a cultural side of Japan a bit more. I actually really enjoyed the music a lot. I enjoyed the lore of the show with the regalia. It kind of gave me a bit of the Bleach vibes and whatnot. And I love the world building and everything. But yeah, even if the show got a season 3 suddenly, I'd say it's 50-50 that the show would have some momentum, considering how long it's been since season 2 aired. But yeah, overall, I think that wraps up this video, and I'm Shadow Wolf here, and I'm signing out. But one more thing I want to add on is I might make a video about the manga. We'll just have to see. Like I said, it might require a different format. But yeah, I'm Shadow Wolf here, and I'm signing out.